Welcome everybody to this webinar on creating meaningful and effective discussion forums in your learning management system, presented to you by the Preparing Future Faculty program at Claremont Graduate University. I'm your host, Jonathan Aragon, PFF Fellow, and co-hosting with me today is Elizabeth Cardenas, PFF Fellow, and we also have our Assistant Director, Shelby Lamar, with us. Yep. And Shamini Diaz, the director of the Preparing Future Faculty program. So again, welcome. Our essential question for today is, how can we create meaningful learning management discussion forums that foster authentic participation and facilitate higher order learning? And here's our agenda for today. So the way we're going to structure today's webinar is we're going to begin by understanding why it is that we use discussion forums to begin with, what that brings to our course that other tasks, assignments, activities maybe do not, some strategies for increasing motivation for participating in those discussion forums, and moderation strategies for it. And at the end of this webinar, we will have a brief poll, and we encourage you to share suggestions in the chat. So if you would like to see more webinars like this, maybe focused on other aspects of discussions, let us know, and we'll be sure to bring that to you. So just to get us thinking about the subject today, let's begin by just starting out in the chat. I would like to hear your thoughts. Why do you think that we have discussion forums? So if you think about your own experiences, either creating discussion forums or participating in them, what do you think the purpose of doing this is to begin with? And there's another two questions here as alternatives, if you would prefer to answer those instead. And we'll spend no more than 1 minute on that. So go ahead and share in the chat below, and I'll read them out for you. To create community, exchange ideas, and exchange with content. Great. For engagement, 100%. Great. Thank you for sharing. I agree, yeah, to create community, exchange ideas, engage deeper with the content, to create more engagement. I will, next time I do this, probably incorporate some of these ideas that you shared here. This is my sort of made up loose definition of why I think LMS discussions are. They're an equal opportunity for community building activities used to facilitate higher order thinking and scaffold student learning outcomes. And what this brings to our course beyond what other tasks is it really is that opportunity for community building. And it's different from, say, a question and answer discussion forum, which is dialogue for gaining information, or perhaps a class project that is for applying knowledge. This is really an opportunity for our students to have a voice and for the teacher to step back and facilitate those deeper thinking processes. And so why do we do them? As many of us said, to engage students in social and peer-based learning, to build community in our class, positive relationships, connections. We can talk about things that maybe aren't so focused on course-heavy content and bring some levity to the course. And it's really a student-centered time, as I said, so this is a time for the instructor to step back and the students to speak more and think and speak freely. It gives your students a voice, and it develops their capacity to have discussions. So being able to discuss is a great skill in life, and it's a professional skill as well. So when we do these, we're modeling for our students how to have discussions in a professional setting, right? Sharing ideas, our thoughts, disagreements, agreements in ways that are non-offensive and professional. And it's also a checkpoint for teaching and learning so that we, as professors, can formatively assess our own teaching. So, what do I mean by that? It is to gauge, say, if your students are struggling maybe with some prior knowledge that you have discussed in class in the discussion, then that can guide you to how you might want to scaffold other assignments in your class. So these are all good reasons why we have discussions. It brings something to our course that maybe other tasks and assignments are not bringing to the class. But the obvious problem that we have with discussion forums in online classes is students can sometimes see it as busy work. You know, it's just another rock in the path, so to speak. It's something that they have to do, so they just want to get it done and cross it off their list. And by doing that, the responses can lack depth of thought. It can be as simple as, I agree, I also like food, maybe not be that rich discussion that we're trying to facilitate. And for us as professors, we can spend a lot of time sort of micromanaging, trying to make it be something that it's not really what we intended, instead of moderating and facilitating those higher order thought processes that we really want. And students might skip it altogether and focus on projects that are worth more points. So if the discussion is just like 5% of the grade, all of the discussions in the course, then it might not even be worth their time. So these are some of the things that can be problematic with discussions. And today we're going to show you some strategies that you can use in creating your own discussions to avoid these problems and sort of harness those good reasons why and avoid these problems here. Just another brief thought process here. If you go ahead and share in the chat, thinking about your own experiences using or participating in discussion, what has made them successful and what has made them not successful? I'm interested in hearing about your experience with discussion forums. So no more than a minute, if you could just share in chat. Timely feedback has been very helpful. Nice. My most successful discussion forums were ones that related to the topic or material to things that I and my peers were working on or looking for our insight. I think when students help to create the discussions, they are more engaged. Moving collectively through a thought process to think about specific actions and practices. Thank you. These are great. So I'm seeing mostly positive experiences here, and what I'm hearing is that what has made these experiences positive is the fact that you're getting feedback from the discussions, that when it's related to the other class materials, it's very helpful. And when students are involved in creating the discussions themselves, it's helpful. And it's very good for scaffolding that thought process. Thank you for sharing. So I think that you actually have already touched on some of the things I'm going to share. We'll just get a little bit deeper into it. So, in terms of motivation, um, we really want to go beyond just using discussion forums as a way of measuring class participation because, and we want to stay away from using them as just standalone activities. We want to look to connect it to other class materials as has been shared by you. Because if we're just using it as a throwaway assignment, it's hard to care about it. So ownership, yes, inviting students to create their own discussion questions and giving them some ownership over it. It's not your pet project that you're trying to get your students to do, but you're giving your students opportunities to take turns creating discussion questions or looking for creative ways in which that they can participate in it. Also, asking questions that don't have straightforward answers. So if you're going for lower order thinking with your discussion questions, or more simply put, if it's just something that you can go on the internet and Google and find the answers to, it's going to be far less engaging than if they're more open-ended questions that are focused on going through this thinking process that's probably more personal to you. And also inviting students to participate in those open-ended questions in more creative ways, using media, using video, creating something, and using materials that go beyond the textbook. So it's probably more engaging not to just keep using the same textbook material for everything you're doing in class, but to look at videos, to look for images, blogs, podcasts, anything that has an engaging and thought-provoking hook that you can begin a discussion with, and then through your moderation of it, probe into deeper considerations and going through it stepwise in that fashion. You also want to connect it to other course activity. So to me, I think this is a really big one. Again, not a standalone activity, right? It's hard to be very invested in an online discussion forum because exchanging through text maybe not be as engaging as doing it in person orally, which can be a little bit more social. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at the design of your class and seeing how it connects to your learning outcomes and the assignments you're giving. So you can use your discussion as a way to scaffold into other class assignments. For instance, if you're assigning a paper in class, how can you use all the benefits that come from having these discussions to get your students thinking about the topic in advance and having a discussion about it to formulate their ideas before they jump into the drafting process? It's just one way you can connect it to other class assignments. And then also having it come up again, right? Reusing the discussion in your lectures, in any other ways you can see this coming up and being reused, it's better. And of course, making the discussion a warm and safe place to participate. So the more points, I would say, the more requirements that you attach to it that are really not 100% necessary, the less of a safe space you're making it, because then students are worried about if they're receiving the points that they want for the discussion, the things that they have to do to receive those points, versus being engaged in it because it's an engaging discussion. So a lot of this comes down to design in the motivation factor. So those are some things to consider. Now, in picking the questions for your discussion itself, it might be helpful for you to review Bloom's taxonomy. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a tool that teachers use to order to look at student learning outcomes from lower order to higher order cognitive processes. And so here we can see that this image is showing Bloom's taxonomy, these 6 steps from lower order to higher order thinking. And so for your discussions, you may want to focus more on these higher order thinking processes. But just think about the questions that you're using and how it's facilitating that. And of course, you can also implement these discussion questions in a variety of ways. So any way that you can do it inside the classroom, if you're creative enough, you can find a way to do it in a discussion forum. So one that I was like, how do you do this in a forum is a fishbowl, where you have a group of students having a conversation, and the rest of the class sits around them, observes the conversation, and then they have a discussion based on that conversation. You could do that in a discussion forum by having students record a video of their discussion, post it on the Canvas discussion board, others watch it and respond to it and have a discussion on that. So whether it's a debate, whether it's a roundtable, any format of having a discussion, you can probably do in an online forum if you're creative on how you go about doing it. But what is even more key than that is really the kind of question itself that you're asking, and using Bloom's taxonomy or some other tool that will give you a guide in what kinds of questions to choose. This is also Bloom's taxonomy. I've separated it into the higher order ones to lower order ones. But you can see here, this is like more of question stems. So what are the parts or features of analysis, evaluation? Do you agree with this? Explain, right? So I'll just give you a second to look at that. And I did want to share this tool with you as well. So when you're selecting your questions, there's this website. It's called Parlay Ideas. And you can go to this to help you choose what kind of questions you might want to ask in your discussion forum. So there's several topics. And so let's say we click on social studies. It's probably... We'll click biology. And we'll just go to this one. So this is more of an icebreaker discussion. And you can see the way it's structured. It has like the learning goals, the content, the discussion questions, and peer feedback instructions. And then it has like a little video to watch there to begin the discussion. So you're probably going to want to come up with your own questions. You want to review your own learning outcomes, your own class assignments, the things that you're trying to scaffold in your class, and develop your own questions. But this is a resource that you can use to help you get thinking about things that you might want to do. So those were some simple motivation strategies. I'm curious to know, are there any strategies that you have that you would like to add? Thanks, Liz. Or any ideas in general? If so, we can take a brief reflective pause to share that in chat. All right, so moving on to moderation. Oh, wait, we have, I think one good strategy, especially through technology, is to use the breakout rooms for discussion forums. Ah, yeah, the breakout rooms are a really great tool. We use it a lot in PFF. Sometimes we'll even go into breakout rooms and use Google Slides for students to collaborate on a class activity and give each other feedback that way. So technology is great, and there's so many technological tools. I mean, Zoom is really becoming the leader, like the go-to choice for synchronous class sessions. But there are many other tools, and so if you want us to do a webinar, say just on going over a lot of tech tools you can use for discussions in the class, let us know, because that could be a whole webinar on itself. And so I'm just going to go on to the next topic, but if anything comes to mind, feel free to share. And any of these questions I pose, they're just to get the thought process going. Feel free to share anything that pops to mind at all, and jump in at any time if you have questions. All right, so moderation. Just like in a focus group or an interview, discussion forums need some sort of moderation, but the goal is not for the teacher to be doing a lot of talking. It's really a time for students to be talking. So just like conducting an interview, you want to facilitate their participation, and you don't want to have to chime in too much. Additionally, one of the issues that can arise when doing discussion forums is I hear professors saying sometimes that students aren't reading the instructions. They're just going in and participating in the conversation, but they have to sort of do these micromanagement tasks that they really don't want to have to do, like nudging students to stay on the topic or the prompt, or students don't seem to understand what the goal of the discussion is, or checking on appropriateness, like reminding students that maybe sarcasm isn't read that well over text, and these sorts of things. So the first step to moderating your discussions and to avoid having to micromanage is to set clear expectations from the top. So you want to have clear goals for the discussion, exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish with the discussion, why it's important. Your students need to know why this is important to the course that they're taking, so they don't feel like it's just busy work, and how exactly do you do it? So on Canvas and other learning management systems, whatever you happen to be using, navigation is a big part of this. So you're probably going to want to demonstrate to your students the first time around, maybe even the first 2 times around, how to navigate the learning management system and use the discussion. So you're really setting up everybody for success. And a really great way to do this is not relying too much on the instructions, because if you just put the text there on the page, students might skip right past the instructions and jump into the discussion because, like all of us, they have competing priorities, they have many tasks to do, and they know that if at least they participate a little bit, they're going to get the points that they need so they can get it crossed off and get back to other assignments that are worth more points. So one way you can really help your students be compassionate about their time and also facilitate a good discussion is to use a video, right? So put a video introduction in the module as a prerequisite before beginning the discussion and lock it so your students have to watch the video before they proceed. And in this video, you don't want to give too many expectations, but you want to just keep it like no more than 3 things and be very straightforward with it, right? The goal of this discussion today is to get us thinking about this subject. The ground rules are, we can share and speak freely as long as we're being respectful of others, and let's stay clear of things like using sarcasm. And then that's basically it, right? Something very straightforward, and that your students watch it in the video, get the idea, okay, I understand what we're trying to accomplish here. And then once the expectations are clearly understood, you have the role of facilitating the forum, doing the moderation tasks. So when moderating, you really want to jump in very minimally for all the reasons that I said. You shouldn't be talking more than the students, but you're really looking for thought-provoking questions, and then you want to probe further. Ask your students to clarify their thoughts that they've already shared. Ask them to expand further on it. Probe a little further. And probably even more importantly, to recognize students' interests and tie that in with other things you're doing in class, to encourage your students and correct where needed from a place of shared interest, from a positive place where we're all just trying to succeed in this course. So if there's a clarification for understanding of a particular concept, then that's the kind of correction you would do there. You also want to build in plenty of processing time. So in a live class discussion, you would pause for students to think and reflect and respond. But in these online discussion forums, you may want to think about maybe giving your students a few days to a week to read and respond to the discussion. And one good strategy is to maybe have the discussion begin. So they must begin by a certain date and make their post by a certain date. So log in, read it, watch the video, and log into the discussion by a certain date, and then submit their response by a certain time. That way, because if you just have it at the end, maybe a lot of students will just post everything the night before. So you really want to get them reading, thinking about the discussion early on so they have time to process. And this can give advantage to, so online discussion forums, I mean, they give advantage to a lot of students that might be shyer to speak up in class if everything was done in person. and speakers that are English as a second language. But if you're, say, English is not your first language, or you're a slow writer, in a live discussion, that could also be a disadvantage, having to write in text, because you may not be as fast as a typer as somebody else. But in these online discussion forums, you're really giving your students the advantage to really give them time to think and respond. And making sure that your students are prepared for the online discussion with any pre-work, with any prior knowledge needed. So let's say that you are discussing something related to a behavior change theory. If you wouldn't be asking your students to compare and contrast constructs from different theories if you haven't really covered that in class yet, right? And so it might be straightforward in that context to you, but in other contexts, maybe not, right? So just realize that any questions you ask, you want to make sure students have the knowledge needed. And that's why maybe scaffolding these discussions, beginning with things that are just related to personal experiences, opinions, even beginning class discussions with things that you like to do for fun, that are hobbies, having more simple questions to be in your first discussions, and then increasing the complexity of thought involved in the discussion as your course progresses. And reuse the discussion forum. So you don't want to, again, have it be just a standalone activity. So look for ways that you can bring what has been done in the discussion back into your class. So include quotes from it in your class slides when you're doing lectures. Bring it into your assignments. You can even have your students, ask your students to create an image or something related to a project that they're doing a group project on, and create a discussion around that, and then bring the results of that discussion back into your class. And that's a good way to have it be more meaningful, connect it to what your students care about. And you might assign different roles as well to your students. So you might, at the end of the discussion, have a review or a summary of what was discussed, the ideas that took place. And you can assign a student, say, to take turns being the ones to summarize the discussion later in class. All right, so I talked a little bit about these Canvas requirement tools. And so I just wanted to give you this resource. So when you access the slides, you'll be able to click this link and download the handout. And it's just a handout that goes like step by step, how do you create these requirements in your module? And I'll just go ahead and show you what that looks like when it's set up. So you see I have it set up modules here. So all you are familiar with this, I'm sure by now, but if not, on Canvas Learning Management System, that's what we use here at our institution. If you just click on modules, you can create separate assignments. So here I've gone to the discussions tab and created a discussion. And this is what it looks like. There's a video, some additional links, discussion questions. Everything is right there. And then I just put any video in here, but this would basically be your instructional video with a submission code that you might want to put in your video, but ideally this would be you talking. And then you have a quiz that needs to be answered, right? So what you would do is you would create these assignments separately, then bring them into your module. Just create a module and add it here. And then when you click on this snowman icon right here, you can edit it. And so you can add a requirement. There's an option here to add a requirement to the module. And so you'll just click students must complete all these requirements, and then click this box, students must move through the requirements in sequential order. So for the video, we'll say submit the assignment, the code, and this is just an example. You might have other creative ways of doing this. You know, the quiz, score 1 of 2, there's only 2 questions in there, 2 of 2. And then for the discussion, participate in it. And then when your students view it, see, these are grayed out. So you can't move on to the discussion until you've watched the video and answered the quiz. So again, you don't really want to put too many rocks in your students' path. You want them to be able to get the discussion and do it fairly easily, but those are just some, you know, road signs along the way where you're asking them just to stop and read really quick. And the key to this is to be brief. If your video is lengthy, it should not be more than a minute. My chat stopped working. Yeah, we're having some flashbacks to the PFF modules recreated. All right. Yep. All right, so I just want to summarize everything we've talked about in this webinar so far. So we discussed understanding the LMS discussion forums as an equal opportunity for community building activities and to facilitate higher order learning related to and to scaffold student learning outcomes. And LMS discussions are not really for formal assessments, so using it as a way of measuring participation may not be the best strategy, right? Because you don't want students to be motivated for points. You want them to be engaged because they're engaged, right? So engagement is a feeling, and we can't force people to feel things. We want them to feel it because it's authentic. And that authenticity is going to come from constructing something that is meaningful and related to things that our students actually care about. So you can't just do something for participation and expect it to be engaging, right? Thanks, Tamar. Motivation for participation through meetings. So give students ownership, use open-ended questions, connect the forum to the rest of the course, and create a warm and safe environment for your students to share. Finally, again, for moderation, be clear but brief, have clear but brief expectations, use strategies such as module requirements in video, not just text, multiple places, multiple ways, minimally facilitate higher order thinking processes, so student talk time, not teacher talk time, but facilitate it. Reuse the forum in other places in your class, and give plenty of processing time for your students to engage in the discussion. Make sure students have the needed prior knowledge to participate. All right, so before going any further, we want to make sure that we get your feedback. So if you could, please respond to this brief poll that has just been launched. And this poll is very straightforward, so when you're done, if you have any suggestions or recommendations for us, please also go ahead and share that in the chat so that we can save the chat and implement those suggestions in our webinar planning. All right, I just wanted to do a quick upcoming event and share with you our next webinar. It'd actually be this Thursday on February 25th from 1 to 2 p.m., hosted by Catherine Connor, PFF Fellow, and Noah Ringler, PFF Fellow. And this will be on transforming teaching and learning through Kristen Olson's popular book, Recapturing the Joy in Learning and Standing Up to Old School Culture. Old school. And we would also like to invite you to join the PFF Ethical Pedagogy community if you haven't already. It's a LinkedIn community, and this is a place where PFF does a lot of our posts and advertisements and opportunities, such as jobs that come up and teaching opportunities, but it's also a place for you, so anybody that joins this community can be connected into our network, and we encourage you to share posts, opportunities, thoughts, ideas. We're really trying to build a community for anybody involved in teaching and learning, for all of those at CGU, and for those who have been through the program and are alumni. We want to keep all of our community connected and engaged with each other. And here are some opportunities. So maybe you haven't created a Canvas LMS yet, but you need to because you're teaching a class, or you want to have that in your portfolio for job posts. Not a problem. If you come make an appointment with us, me or any other PFF team member, we'll be happy to walk you through that and help you set that up, to help you learn how to set up a discussion. I wish there was enough time to do something like that in these webinars, but really we have the appointment system, so please feel free to take advantage of that. Email us. This is a link tree here, so this will link you to all our other social media sites. We have more than linked one in one. And send us an email if you have any questions. I also put on this slide a list of many resources that you can use to facilitate discussions in your forums and even live discussions. So there's a bunch of tools there. Check it out, see what works for you, see what you like. And all that said, I would like to open this up now. If you have any questions, anything you would like to add, just talk about anything in general. I'm done talking, so this is your time. Questions, concerns, confessions, celebrations? Thank you, Tamara. It's a pleasure to have you. And also, don't feel like you have to stay. You're free to go, but you're free to stay if you'd like. on ethical pedagogy. There may be. That's something that, if you're suggesting it, then we can look to offering a webinar on that topic. A student has asked, will there be presentations on ethical pedagogy? Hmm. Yeah, that's a great topic. Expand on engagement and motivation aspect as it relates to Zoom burnout. Are there any specific tools that have become more useful during COVID times? Uh, Tomorrow, I'm thinking, as far as that goes, having the hybrid classes where it's not all, camera time, having like a hybrid synchronous, asynchronous session, thank you, Liz, is one way to do that. I think it's difficult for us. We can't really control all of the meetings and classes everyone has to be in on Zoom, but in our classes, we certainly can look for ways to do, students can do things, just log on to Canvas. You can have sessions where students just log in and do their work or collaborate, do these sort of things, not in person. I think that really helps with the Zoom burnout. And yeah, I'm interested if Liz or Shelby have anything to add to that. But that could be a really good webinar topic for us to do too, and really look at the science of that, because I think that's something a lot of folks are concerned about right now, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be something that's going away anytime soon. So we should be more well versed on that.
If I may add, it may be something to strengthen as a way to speak against the push to open up campus. Do you get what I'm saying? Like that, okay, well, but look, there's so much we are developing here in order to keep folks safe. I'm just thinking out loud.
Oh, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that because we have those, then you're thinking, because we have these tools now, you're thinking not going to go live on campus anytime soon, because we have that other way of doing things.
It would be, yes, exactly. It would be something to add to the toolkit as a way to show that distance learning, remote learning is something that's evolving and growing and, has a lot to offer. Yeah.
Just a quick comment on that, Jonathan. I don't know if I wanted to chime in really quickly. I think it's a good topic tomorrow that definitely we can think about seeing if we can create a webinar for. And I'm thinking like for Zoom burnout, one strategy that I feel has worked for me, and I've seen it kind of being done more frequently, is using kind of class time to really focus on discussions and doing a lot more asynchronous learning where, students can kind of preview lectures, or you do like recorded lectures, or you do a lot of asynchronous learning that, a student can do independently that doesn't require as much collaborative discussion, and then really saving the Zoom time, class time, for focused discussions to scaffold and to offer an opportunity for dialogue. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think all of us, our eyes are tired of computer screens. So if you could kind of keep that balance of using time very mindfully, where the time that the class is together, it's really focused on aspects of learning that that are most enhanced when you dialogue with one another, and then everything else can kind of be shifted to asynchronous, where you can kind of learn independently, but it really depends on the class and kind of the subject matter. But I have seen it being done, and I do think it could be a really effective way that we could kind of continue to do moving forward. There was, I think CGU did that online survey, and there was, I can't remember what exactly the comment was, but it stood out to me because it basically the kind of the key takeaway was that students really enjoyed kind of doing the whole recorded lecture where you can kind of reflect back and listen to it kind of at your own leisure. And we want to keep that up, right? So I think that kind of does it. It's a silver lining in the kind of COVID period of learning where we can now kind of continue to use that strategy and then use the Zoom option to connect with one another more conveniently, where we can kind of just do it in the evening or find a time that works for everyone.
It reminds me of a study that just came out. It was like a meta study, and they were showing that if you use videos in addition to like a regular class time, it actually, I think it was like a meta study of 35, maybe it was more than that, but anyway, they showed that if you used videos outside of class time, whether it was on Zoom or online, there was a full grade letter bump in the average student grade. I know, I was like shocked. That's huge significance, right? So I think if nothing else, the pandemic has shown us how important multiple modes are. Students need, especially they were saying lectures where you're showing students how to do something, or very detailed explanations. Those videos are really helpful because they can go back and watch them again and again. And then, like Liz was saying, use that class time for discussion and actual work and things like that, where students can get that immediate feedback compared to when they need to work through something on their own in a more like focused way where they're not having to watch their own face on Zoom or something like that. So side note, but yeah, I was really excited about that study.
Thank you, all three of you. I mean, I've noticed that also on the admin side. Everyone's just like, I don't want to look at my face anymore, and or various iterations of that. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating that bump in grades. I mean, I think also it's a matter of being able to go at your own pace if the video is external, which sometimes that can be kind of cumbersome to follow along as the thing is happening or the lecture is taking place. Thank you all three of you.